And I'm joined here in the studio by Florence Filomeno for a look at what's grabbing headlines. Hi, Flo. We're going to start off here in France, and it says we did see one very big story. We're still getting reaction to this as yesterday President Macron unveiled his controversial labor reforms.
It's the top story in the French press today. Mixed reactions depending on where the paper is situated on the political spectrum. So let's start all the way at the left end of that spectrum with the communist paper L'Humanité. Unsurprisingly, they're quite outraged by this reform that was outlined yesterday. You can see it says the labor code has been torn to shreds. Workers have everything to lose, and employers are the big winners, according to L'Humanité. If we go a little bit more towards the center, but the left center with Libération, they're actually also quite alarmed by this reform and actually accuses the government of playing into the hands of big business. And you can see this happening quite literally here on the front page of Libération. You can see the president, Emmanuel Macron, shaking hands with Pierre Gattaz. He's been in the spotlight a lot recently. He's the president of the main union of business representatives, the MEDEF, here in France. And so you can see Libération, it appears that they've done a deal with this reform. Merci Macron, so thank you Macron, which is actually a reference to a documentary that came out last year called Merci Patron, Thank You Boss, which was about how the business class kind of runs things in France. And so you can see they're saying, thank you, boss, thank you, Macron.
Well, what are we seeing then from right-wing papers?
Well, there's more enthusiasm, as you can imagine. Let's start with the pro-business paper L'Opinion, which is quite thrilled by this reform, it must be said. Likens it to a big bang on their front page here. It's ambitious, it's innovative, it's a revolution, according to L'Opinion, and it's going to completely reshape France. Now, Le Figaro, the main conservative paper, is a little bit more guarded, but definitely happy with the direction things are taking. In fact, it's taking France in the right direction, according to Le Figaro. It could be a major game changer for France. And even though it applauds Macron for really not flinching at the last minute, holding strong, Le Figaro does have a word of warning in its editorial for the government, and it says you have to hold tight and really see this reform all the way through.
And now we are seeing the story, of course, get a lot of attention abroad as well.
Indeed. I just pulled out one editorial. There are several articles across the world, in fact, but this is the Wall Street Journal. I thought they had an interesting title in their editorial here. So this is the conservative, very pro-business paper. Unsurprisingly, they're thrilled with this reform. You can see they're talking about how it's the Labor Liberation Day. It sounds kind of like Bastille Day for the Wall Street Journal. Now, according to the paper, this labor reform could actually really remake France's economy, lower unemployment. Currently, the economy is moribund, according to the Wall Street Journal, but that is a choice, and France is clearly about to choose something else.
Hurricane Harvey, Flo, it continues to be a top story on the United States.
And there are, of course, several other extreme weather stories around the world, monsoon flooding in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. But there is still a lot of focus on Harvey in the press, particularly in the American press, as you can imagine. And there's an interesting article in the New York Times I pulled out that focuses on how this was a storm with no boundaries. Harvey really, in its path of destruction, was battering poor and rich people in the same way. And this is quite different from what we saw, for instance, with Hurricane Katrina, where it was mainly poor populations that were affected. A different story coming out of Houston.
Now, I understand the Washington Post in the U.S. spoke to some evacuees and really asked them what possessions they took with them.
And it's a real question. It's quite a fascinating question, a philosophical question almost. If you're faced with rising floodwaters and have to escape from your house very quickly, what do you actually take with you? Well, the Washington Post interviewed people in rescue shelters, and they came up with quite a variety of things that they decided to take with them. The article, for instance, describes how one person brought a Bible, many people brought insurance papers or medicine. There was one woman who hesitated about bringing her diamond bracelet, but took it off at the last minute and said it's just a bunch of rocks that someone said had value. Instead, what she did is she took her dog and put it in a cooler and decided to take her dog. And indeed, pets are a big thing that people have been taking with them as they flee their houses. And that is another difference with Hurricane Katrina. In the Hurricane Katrina, rescue shelters weren't allowing people to come with their pets In Houston, they are, and so that's been a major difference. Unfortunately, though, there are people who lost their pets during the storm, and a growing army of animal lovers is on the ground, according to The Guardian, in Houston, trying to rescue them. It's quite a sweet story of I guess you could say, pets being reunited with their loved ones. And The Guardian says there aren't a lot of good moments in the middle of a tragedy, but that sure is one of them.
No, indeed, certainly harrowing times there in Texas as well as in Louisiana. Flo, thank you very much for that. And for more, you can head to our website. That's france24.com/inthepress.